Gentlemen, welcome to the 2019 LGBT Health Forum, called this year Getting the Word Out, Stonewall, the Power of Information, and the LGBTQ Health. My name is Phil Sharp. I'm a member of the advisory board, a very proud member of the advisory board to the LGBT Health Graduate Certificate Program. And as some of you know, or many of you know, this is in its 7th year. This is the 7th year of the forum, 7th year for the program, and it has garnered enormous attention around the country and elsewhere because of its ability, the program's ability to help students enhance their skills and to develop their careers in a very important area. And also as a major contributor to health policy issues affecting the LGBT community, as well as making sure the practice of healthcare is more sensitive to those special needs. Now, I can give you a little sneak preview that the program is about to receive a major national award. However, the organization giving it is not ready for us to make it public. So you'll just have to ask Steve and pressure him and whatnot. Now, I think everybody knows Steve Forssell, or you should if you don't. He is the creator, he is the founder, he is the key leader of the Health Certificate Program. And I met him 14 years ago at a coffee shop at 17th and Q Street. I see a few people here that attend that coffee shop rather regularly. We all have a rather narrow social capacity. And I want to tell you that at that coffee shop, it's continual discussion of profound issues, high intelligence, genuine commitment. I mean, Aristotle and Plato would be proud, but that would be fake news. Just 5 blocks from here, we get more than enough of that at a place called 1600 something or other. But one thing that I noticed when I first met Steve that would happen is we could have a light conversation going, but if somebody started engaging in pop psychology, suddenly there was a very kind and serious correction of what we have learned from the study and research of psychology, and he would bring it into the conversation. And whenever the issue turned to teaching, to his students, to his program, there was always a thoughtfulness and a seriousness that is, I think, obvious to virtually everybody that knows Steve, of his commitment to the issues, the programs, and his personal contribution. And his contribution at the university has been recognized by the student body for being one of the outstanding teachers here at the university. He has garnered various kinds of awards in addition to that, and I think that we're all very pleased that Steve is leading this program. So, ladies and gentlemen, Steve Forssell.
Thanks for coming. You noticed we're in a different space than we were the previous year and the year before that. I kind of like the space. We'll see what everyone thinks about it moving forward. I hope you enjoy the new setting, and thank you for coming out, because it's always in the hot days of summer. It's not always easy to do. I wanted to thank a few people and entities and our sponsors as well for helping us put this on. George Washington University itself, the large university, deserves a lot of credit, because when I pitched this thing 8 years ago or so, it's edgy. There was no one else doing anything like this, and it was very risky. And they threw their support and a few bucks at us, and we were able to get this thing going. And now I get calls from other universities and places that want to do something similar. So that's very gratifying. Specific thanks to Lauren Ingram, who is in the house tonight. He is the director of department. He took my program into his department. You need some place to live as an academic department. department, and no one else would have us, but he saw the potential too. So thanks to them. I've also got some very, very good help this year in terms of a new administrative assistant, Jonathan, who's been around. I don't know if he's here right now, but super terrific guy, and the whole crew of blue-shirted interns and volunteers. They are part of an undergraduate student program in health of underserved populations. Two of them specifically are interns, Stanley, so that's been terrific. Wouldn't be one of these types of things if we didn't thank sponsors, and we really do want to thank the sponsors. Gilead and AHF, very much from different points of view in the spectrum, have both been very supportive. It's rare that Gilead does tuition support, and AHF has also supported us with scholarships, which is hard to do. Most often, big foundations want to see, projects. They want to put money into a project where we get a result. And we made the argument that you don't have big projects unless you have well-trained people, and they supported us on that. Our other supporters include the Washington Blade, our media sponsor, Floriana Restaurant, and the College of Hines, Jimmy Fells Group has provided some along for tonight. And our angel donors, Quinn Schott and Dave Edmondson, neither of whom are here tonight, they're in other places, but they're very big donors. We have, I think, some donors in the house tonight. I know Dan Daly is here, Richard Ruth is here, and I think his better half is here as well. Michael Planky, thank you for coming and being with us. I didn't see John and Jim Diamonds, but they are also among our most loyal donors. And a few board members, Phil included, and also Rick Rosell sitting right behind him, another member of our advisory board. And lastly, Josh Levy with French Digital, who helps us with graphics. So, if you're not already aware, the last piece before you start talking is we have the wine and cheese thing going on afterwards. We just ask for like a modest donation to the program, whatever's in your heart, but we recommend $25. But if you only got 3, we'll take it. If you got 3,000, we'll take that. You can see there are donor cards, so you can fill out the credit card information you give it to us. You may be able to do it online. I will be sitting there too. But if you are registered, please go with your name, and if you want to last minute, this can do that too. So, for those of you who don't know, this forum event has always. Oh, I need to acknowledge too that Vicky Cruz is. We're not sure exactly if she's on the way or not, but if she does happen to come, she'll have us. So obviously we're not this forum is the main event that we put on as a part of the LGBT Health Policy and Practice Certificate that Phil mentioned. Our mission there is to train providers of care across the spectrum: medical, nursing, social work, mental health, education. Anyone who has contact with the community, we want them to improve the quality of the care for the people that we serve. And that's the mission, and that's where this comes from. And we have students from all over the world, really, and all over the country, too. And I won't ask you to stand, but please talk to people at the reception and let people know who you are and why you're here and why it's important to you. So what I wanted to focus on with this event was how information is important, how the proper dissemination of information in all of its forms. Information is power, and I think we've got people on this panel now who are very powerful in the words, very powerful in the information they're able to disseminate to make things happen. If you feel Stonewall to death, this will probably be the last one this season. But I don't want to minimize it. I also don't want to overdo it. But Stonewall was a very important event. Not many of us were old enough. I certainly only barely remember it, but it was a very important thing to our community, and that's what we really want to talk about. What would activism, what would our community look like technically mentally ill if it were not for Stonewall, which you can almost draw a direct line between and the removal of homosexuality from the DSM. What would our response to the AIDS crisis have looked like if we didn't have this kind of, how would culture change? How would literature and art and culture change? So the people on the panel are very good with getting words out there, written word, spoken word, research, investigation, all forms of media, print journalism, broadcast journalism, and activism, all aimed at advancing our rights, which I think is really good. So, people on our panel, I'll let them introduce themselves, but they have come from very, very different parts of our community. Michael Denneny, my left here, was Mike. He wouldn't say this maybe necessarily, but he almost single-handedly created mainstream gay media. He's very important in the works that in writing that came out right after. I think he more or less made a beeline from Chicago right after Stonewall happened, and the rest is history. Esther, moving to my left, did her first publication on drag communities prior to Stonewall. I think her dissertation was in 1968.
Correct.
And was focusing on the culture that was very important. Charles Silverstein, right to my left, was one of the very small group of people that were working to get homosexuality out of the DSM. A lot of those people have passed, and Robert Spitzer, and Barbara Hughes, and Frank Hammond, all were a very much large part of that. I dare say one of the youngest in our group, Joshua Johnson, who's very important in sort of getting the broadcast, getting the word out and continuing to get the word out is important. And Joshua's been very, very visible as a member of the community. And I heard you speaking earlier about it. If it's content worthy, if it's good stuff to get on the air, then it goes on the air. But his show on NPR is terrific. And I'm sure most of you know who he is. Kevin Naff, that's not Kevin Naff, no. Kevin did us the favor of telling us that he had conjunctivitis, so he didn't want to share that with us, and he wanted to share a lot of things, but not that. And no better replacement for Kevin, who was many years junior of most of this panel, is Lou Chibarro, who's the senior most writer, I suppose, at the Blade. He's been there since '76, is it? The Blade was formed in the wake of Stonewall as well in October of 1969. Was when it was formed as the Gay Blade, as I recall. So we want to have a conversation about all of this stuff. And I'm actually, Charles, if you don't mind, I'm going to sort of start with you. Actually, let's do a real brief introduction. We'll go down the line here. Just say a few words about why you're here and sort of the importance of Stonewall and your particular
It's called bragging rights.
Right.
Is it on? You hear me? Good. I'm a clinical psychologist from New York City. I was the psychologist who made the presentation before the psychiatrist for the deletion of homosexuality as a disorder. That was February 8th, 1973, and December 15th, 73 was deleted. I published 8 books about homosexuality. The most popular, best known is The Joy of Gay Sex, first with Ed White, and then 2 other editions with Felice McConnell. I founded the Journal of Homosexuality, founded Identity House in New York, which is a peer counseling center. And 2 years later, the Institute for Human Identity, which was a full-time therapeutic center. In contrast to the 25,000 people I know claim to have been at the Stonewall on The more popular the Stonewall gets, the more people claim to have been. I was in the closet at the time. But it was through the Gay Activist Alliance that I came out became an activist and participated in lots of the ZAPs then. And I have continued in activism since then. It's in my blood, and I expect to die as an activist. And I think that's enough.
I was living in Chicago at the time of Stonewall, which impacted me like a thundercloud. I mean, it resonated throughout the whole of what was basically underground gay America at the time. And I decided that I would have to move to New York, and I did. And then I had to get a day job, which ended up being in publishing. I'd previously been an academic. And I got involved in '73 with a thing called Out Magazine, which was founded by 4 of the guys who had done the newsletter for GAA. It only lasted for 2 issues after an enormous amount of work putting it together. And most of us were very discouraged about it. But one of the younger people who was working on the magazine, Chuck Ortler, was utterly convinced that at that time, when it did not seem that direct political activity was going to have much impact, that the major thing needed was a cultural revolution, was a change in the consciousness, and especially a change in how gay people thought about their own lives. And Chuck and I ended up in a serious discussion for the next 2 years. He totally convinced me. And because of his unbelievable persistence, then in '76 we were able to start Christopher Street. I also was the first person in Maine. Publishing is was a very odd business in that it had a large number of gays and lesbians, a large number of women, but a lot of those women were lesbians working in it. But it was totally the don't ask, don't tell. I mean, nobody could mention it. I had been very political in the '60s, which was one reason I came to New York after Stonewall, and decided that it wasn't worth it to stay in publishing if I had to lie in any way. So I swore I wouldn't lie about it, but in the first couple of years I didn't go out bragging about it. But then I did the first book I did on homosexuality, originally called The Homosexuals, Who and What We Are. It was like 1972 or 3 when I signed it up. That was not the final, I mean, The Homosexuals was the final title, but we had a much better subtitle. And to get a book signed up at Macmillan at the time, the old Macmillan, you had to get the signatures of 5 vice presidents, you had to fill out all these forms. There was a lot of process that you went through, which I had gone through. And I signed up the book, and in the preparation for the sales conference, where everybody in the company gets together, usually goes to Phoenix or Puerto Rico or someplace, and you describe the new list to all your salespeople. And one of the before that, the CEO of Macmillan saw on the list this book, The Homosexuals, and was horrified and fired me. But then the legal department told him, because I had been very careful to write a delivery and acceptance letter, which legally stops the clock ticking. And after such a letter, the legal department told him he had to publish the book, or Alan could sue us. He then retreated on that. But then what happened was every editor at the Macmillan Company refused to present the book, including the editor-in-chief. So they finally hired me back to present one book, you know, which I thought was very funny, but it got even funnier. Because out in Phoenix, I had fairly good relations with salespeople. And one of the salespersons who had read the manuscript had a whole bunch of questions and was very disturbed. He was a New York salesperson. And the book is a series of interviews. And there was an interview in the book with a gay rabbi, which John did not think was possible. There was also a description in the book of fist fucking, which John did not think was possible. So there's a question being raised, well, in a situation like this, but actually a bit bigger, with about 300 people. And you're standing there on the stage, and this guy who I think was actually trying to be helpful, because he was basically a friend of mine, but he was very disturbed by these two things in the book. And you get the question, and you just sort of hope that the ground will disappear and you'll be invisible. I had like 3 minutes to decide, and I figured, well, if I don't answer the question, the book will be totally destroyed from this point. So I said, Chuck, you know the bar in the very far west, not the bar, the building in the very far west of 14th Street that looks like the Flatiron Building, it's a triangular building. His area was the southern half of Manhattan. And he said, yeah, he knew the building. And I said, well, it's a gay bar, and I've been there. And they have sex acts on the stage. And I said, I've actually seen fist fucking. And yes, it is anatomically possible. And you can get it. And they said, and I happen socially to know the gay rabbi, and I'll be glad to take you to lunch with him. So the cat was out of the bag at that point. Although I hadn't made an issue about being gay, I had determined that I would not lie about it. Got the whole thing out in the open. And 2 years later, we started Christopher Street magazine, Chuck Bartlett and I and a bunch of other guys. And at the last moment, a whole lot of people in publishing called me up that I didn't know. Muckety mucks, you know, vice presidents of Harcourt Race and senior vice presidents of Viking, etc., to invite me to lunch. And basically, I was curious why these people, I'd only been in publishing 3 or 4 years by then, why they're inviting me to lunch. It turned out they were all closeted gay people who told me that they'd heard about the magazine through some networks of their own, and that I should be sure that my name was not on the masthead, because if it was, I would have no career in publishing. I found that hard to believe, but I said, I wish you told me 2 years ago. You know, I've been working with this whole group of people for 2 years, and I can't take my name off the magazine now. And I was fired exactly 1 week after the magazine came out. And then in an interesting little coda, the legal department, as I said, I had friends there, had me to lunch to discuss the whole issue of firing and whether or not I should try to sue the company. And they said, well, if they say you were fired for cause, that is, if they say you were fired because you're a lousy editor, or you didn't publish any books that made money, or some other reasonable cause, then you've probably got a good case. Because I had just published For Colored Girls That Have Considered Suicide When the Rainbow Is Enough, which was had a huge impact in New York City at the time, and became a bestseller. And I'd published other books that had done quite well. And they said it would be a fight, but you might actually win that. if he says that he fired you because you're homosexual, you have no chance whatsoever, because it is totally legal in 1976 to fire somebody for being homosexual. It's an open and shut case, no problem. And then, of course, they said, but on the other hand, if you sue a publishing company, you're probably not going to have much of a future in publishing. People don't like that. You know, so I didn't sue them. Anyway, that's enough for me.
Is that working?
Yes.
Excellent. Good. My name is Esther Newton. I am a retired cultural anthropologist who has over a long lifetime co-authored and co-edited 6 books and many essays about the culture and history of lesbians and gay men, including drag queens, as was alluded to, some of whom might now identify as trans. That identity was just starting to emerge at that time. My latest book is a memoir, My Butch Career, and just to show how important leadership is, he's the one who signed that book to a trade publisher, which I never thought could be possible that would happen. And in the 80s, it started to be possible, there started to be interest in publishing in gay and lesbian work. But he didn't sign mine till 1996, I think it was, but it was really life-changing because it's very difficult when you're queer to imagine yourself into situations that have been forbidden or just no interest or whatever, and he gave me that hope. My first book, which was before Stonewall, was based on my dissertation in 1968 called Mother Camp, Female Impersonators in America, and it was the first anthropological, meaning cultural, study of any part of the pre-Stonewall gay community, which bombed, incidentally. I mean, nobody read it. But eventually, and for those of you who want to publish, if your book can stay in print long enough, it will find its audience, if it has merit, but it took quite a while. Although I was professionally closeted, if you can believe that, my attitude toward the drag queens was empathetic, and I did not accept the queers are sick trope that was then universally accepted, as I think you can see from what we've said. At the time of the Stonewall riots, I was 28 years old, although still professionally closeted and afraid of losing my job, because, as Michael said, you know, nobody wanted a homosexual working for them. It wasn't that long after the McCarthy period where, you know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people did lose their jobs because they were homosexual or accused of being homosexual. So I was afraid of losing my job, but I went to some GLF meetings, that's the Gay Liberation Front, which came right out of the riots, until a group of us lesbians left to form a separate group called Radical Lesbians. By 1971, I had found the courage to participate in the Gay Liberation March in New York City. It was originally called the Gay Liberation March, not Pride. During that time, I was at a second event that sprang from Stonewall and had a profound effect on the politics and well-being of lesbians and bisexual women, though it gets no mainstream recognition. This was the Lavender Menace protest that occurred on June 1, 1970 at something called the Second Congress to Unite Women in New York. A group of women dramatically interrupted the conference to protest the exclusion of lesbians from the official and then homophobic feminist movement. They not only, it was one of the most successful zaps probably in the whole history of the gay movement, because they not only achieved inclusion within the feminist movement, but also gave birth to another movement called lesbian feminism, which led to a decade during the 70s of cultural achievements like bookstores, presses, battered women's shelters. But it also led to a temporary political separation from gay men, which basically ended in the 80s with AIDS. Reading and writing books, essays, and scripts are, etc., in which we can see ourselves, has, since at least the 19th century, played a leading role in creating and reflecting gay, LGBTQ, what has now that culture, and has been the protein that has fed the queer imagination, playing a vital role in community building and mental health. And I want to say just one more thing, which is kudos to this program. As someone who's been frequently hospitalized in the last 4 years, I know there's a tremendous amount of work to be done in that field. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Hi. I'll be brief. My name is Joshua Johnson. I'm the host of 1A, which is a daily talk show from WAMU. And that's it. Thank you very much. We're a daily talk show from WAMU and NPR. For those of you who've not heard us, we're on from 10 to noon on WAMU. We podcast. We're online at the1a.org. And we talk about a little bit of everything. And I think why I'm here is because of the work that we do, not just with LGBTQ issues, but with a little bit of everything. My job on 1A is not so much as a journalist as it is as a professional interviewer and a storyteller. Our responsibility in public media is to speak to the whole country all the time. So we don't really know who's in the audience. Because of that, we have to find ways to make every story we tell as broadly interesting as possible. So we have to figure out ways to find common bonds between the person we're interviewing and you. What is it about their life, their story, their challenge, the opportunities they face, what they've overcome, that you might be able to either relate to or empathize with? And being able to do that has allowed us to tell all kinds of different stories. We are also a place where people can just ask very basic questions and get very basic information. It's amazing how useful it is to just tell people things that you normally wouldn't admit you don't know. You know, those things we go, oh yeah, of course I know what that acronym means. But just for the person next to me who doesn't know, that's our job. For example, when we've done shows about transgender issues, one of the things that I tend to say every time is, before we continue, we just want to clarify two things. First, we're talking about gender identity, which is different from sexual orientation. Gender identity is who you see yourself as. Sexual orientation is who you see yourself with.